This video is about things that bands will do wrong when preparing for a recording session. First thing I'm going to look at is coming into the studio unprepared. I want to split this up into two sections. So the first one is coming in unprepared in terms of your instruments. By this we mean strings, sticks, and setup, spares. So turning up with enough strings, turning up with spare strings. I had a session, I remember being and sitting on the session as assistant for Gil Norton. Band came down for 3 days, working on some songs, and the guitarist broke the strings. None of the band bought spares, so they had to pop out. I think we lost about half an hour to an hour whilst we were waiting for them to come back, get strings, replace them, and kind of just crack on. So you kind of, having spares something like that, if they had it would have taken about 5 minutes, and we could have been working on something else in the time being. So spare strings are always possible. I've done sessions where the drummer has not turned up with any sticks. Seriously, I'm not your mum. Bring your own sticks. You're a drummer. So setup, we're looking at sort of tuning is even across the entire neck. There's no dead frets that might have been refretted, or there's no issues with fret buzz, or like the action's too high. Normally a good guitar luthier will kind of sort all that out for you. On some sessions we can arrange for people to come in, but other times you might have to send the guitar off to get fixed, and that could be a day turnaround. It's better off getting all this stuff done in advance. And the other thing as well, when we're turning in terms of instrument, is generally try and bring as much stuff as you have. I'm much happier if a band have bought more than they really need, because we've always got options. If bands don't turn up with anything, they're kind of stuck to what we might have. Generally, when we work in Rockfield, we normally get in touch with the band in advance, so we can kind of talk to them and say, well, look, is there anything that you guys are missing or you guys need? So we can kind of pick that up and bring that with us. Rockfield, for an example, have a couple of really, really nice vintage amplifiers there. They don't have any guitars and they don't have a drum kit on site. It's always been the responsibility from how they've always worked, is that their business model has always been focused on the artists were always big labels, and they'll always be bringing stuff. If there's anything that's been left there, it's been by accident and they're not left in the studio. Try and bring as much stuff as you possibly can, and in advance of the session, just communicate with the producer, the studio engineer or the studio manager about the equipment that's available there and what will be available for the session. If you're turning up and you haven't bought anything, then it can kind of lead to awkward situations where haven't quite got the right sound, and we're kind of up against it in terms of what's available and what we can do with the sounds that you guys have had. So bring as much stuff as possible. It's always handy, and it always actually set you up for a really, really enjoyable session. The second thing then in terms of the preparedness is in terms of your songs. We're not in the 90s anymore, so don't think we can start writing songs in the studio. That time is for rehearsals. It still happens from time to time. Bands might turn up and the song structures aren't prepared or the songs aren't written. And the only time I've ever actually seen it work is with a band who've kind of been together for 20, 30 years. And they've got the reason it works is because they've got the experience of writing tons and tons of songs and knowing what works. They can go in and smash out songs and be really, really prepared. But they're also kind of session level players. A lot of new bands, a lot of new artists, you won't have that kind of experience, and trying to kind of work it on the day and trying to come up with ideas and inspiration doesn't quite work. If we compare it back to the 90s, or say like the 70s and 80s, the budgets for recording sessions were much, much higher. So it was much easier for them to kind of spend a long time in the studio writing the songs, coming up with ideas, because the pressure on time wasn't as great. Nowadays, we're kind of looking at a situation where what I'm hoping has happened is like the technology is so good is you can record on your phone. You can kind of record things on a laptop or something, or an app, and you can kind of listen back to yourself. What I'd say is before going into the studio, in rehearsals, film yourself. Film the band performing, and you can kind of then look at it objectively, look at how you think the songs are working, if anything needs to change, if the structure's too long, and kind of work on those bits before coming into the studio. And you will save tons of time doing that. The other thing that happens with songs in terms of the structures and stuff is bands might change the structures, or certain members of the band won't learn the parts. And the most annoying thing as a producer and engineer is when you've got to spend an hour to 2-3 hours trying to fix a piece, rather than them having the musician being able to play it themselves and play it really, really well. So practice, practice, practice. For the love of God, please practice, and you'll see everyone will love you, and it'll be much, much, much easier. Next thing that you hear often in sessions, we can fix that in the mix, can't we? No, don't fix it in the mix. Fix it now. Please, for the love of God, fix it now. You'd save more time. If there's a section that's quite wrong or a solo that isn't quite right, just literally, it's quicker just to punch in while the settings are dialed in than trying to use editing and effects to try and fix an error that should have just been done straight away. And if you're starting in producing, try and get in the habit of just getting people to kind of record it and not try and fix things later on. The final thing I want to talk about is time. When I get inquiries about recording sessions, I usually kind of talk to them and say, well, this is how long I think it'll take and this is what the budget will be. And then there might be a bit of back and forth saying, okay, the budget might be too much, or what can we do in this time? And you'll generally have a conversation, and we'll always try and say, well, look, this is what we can do in that time, and this is how we can achieve it. The reason for this is we're not looking at trying to make as much money as possible out of the artist or the band, is that we want to try and get the best possible sound and quality for the artist in the time and the budget that they've given us. So trying to cram in extra songs at the last minute, or trying to cram in extra bits and pieces onto the session, trying to add in an extra song means you've got to try and record drums, you've got to edit more drums, and you've got to add an extra guitar part, and extra basses, and extra vocals, and combine the vocals. So there's like a whole nother section of bits and pieces, and what that does is take time away from the focus of the other songs that you're recording. So if the band are good and you can do it, that's great, but it normally means that the session becomes a bit more stressful because everyone's up against the wall, everyone's kind of focusing on, okay, we need to get this done. Everything becomes a bit more stressful, and it means the performances might not be as good, and that the parts might be rushed, or you might miss something. I've been on sessions where it's been really, really stressful because there's been a lot of stuff to record, and you don't have time to stop or think and actually look and analyze. And it generally just means that, like, if you're rushing stuff, if you're trying to cram too much in, it just means that, like, you might miss something and the performances might not be as good. And the performances could be from the engineer, the producer, or the artist. So everyone's trying to play together. And it just means that if we can get this right, it'll just be a bit easier and a bit more relaxing for the session. That's what everyone wants, really, is everyone to have a laugh and be a really, really memorable experience. So don't turn up unprepared. Bring loads of gear. For the love of God, bring sticks if you're a drummer. Can't even begin to explain how annoying that can be. Like, you have one job. Turn up with drums and sticks. We do have drums in the studio, so you can always do that, but, like, for the love of God, just bring your own sticks. I'm not a charity. And the most enjoyable sessions that I've been involved with has been when there's been enough time and the band have turned up and they're really, really prepared for the session. They've rehearsed it, you can put them in the room and they sound amazing. And that just generally means that there's less work as the engineer and the producer for them to do to make you sound good. And it is because you already sound good. And that's the great thing about recording. If you get recording right, the best sessions I've been on is where literally, like, the atmosphere has been great. Everyone's relaxed. And so that means the performances are amazing. You get the performances right, you're on to a winner. And it's much, much easier. And that's what I love about recording. That's what I got into recording for as well. Thanks very much for listening. If you like what you're watching, please press subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications. And any feedback, any questions, let me know. I'd love to hear your responses or anything that I might have missed out, or your kind of take on things. Always open to the suggestions, and let me know if there's anything you want me to cover in the future videos. Thanks very much.